Today I'm going to try to give you guys some easy strategies you can use to make and plan healthier meals. And we're going to cover a few strategies to get your family on board with those healthier meals, because Lord knows that's not always easy. And then at the end I'll answer any questions you guys have about healthy eating or cooking. If you're not ready to make these changes in your life, that is perfectly okay. I imagine most of you guys are here because you're interested in making some changes, or you're interested in learning some more about healthy eating. But if you're not ready to jump off the deep end and go hog wild into vegetables and be feeding your kids raw stuff all the time, nobody's gonna judge you here, okay? We have to take baby steps. Even if you hear one thing today that inspires you to make a little change, I've done my job. So don't feel like just because something is right for me or has worked for me doesn't mean it's right for you. I'm not one of those people who gets all judgy and says if you're not eating the way I'm eating, you're doing it wrong, because I really don't believe that. So just a couple weeks ago, I was reading this article from the New York Times Magazine about the science of junk food, and there was a quote in it about the shelf life of Lunchables, which is 20 weeks or something. And I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was oh my God, how is something that's supposed to be fresh food, like fresh meat and stuff, lasting 20 weeks? That's crazy. I put it on my Facebook page because I thought it was nuts. And I got all these responses from moms that made me really sad, because some of them were feeling really defensive. They were saying, well, some of us don't have time to make it fresh, Lacey. And then some people were saying, oh my God, that makes me feel so guilty because I feed my kids Lunchables. And that was not my intention at all. I was not there to make anybody feel bad about eating Lunchables. I was just holy cow, I did not know this about Lunchables. And so that's what I'm doing today. I'm just sharing info, not here to make you feel guilty or anything like that. But again, if something resonates with you today, one little thing you can improve or change in your life, then that's all I'm really looking for at this point. Because these are all choices we're making. There are lots of reasons we make the choices we make. If you're making the choice to serve those Lunchables, there's reasons behind that, and I'm not here to judge those reasons, but they are choices. And so the choices you have to make to eat healthier aren't always super easy. And I'm not going to tell you they are. I'm not going to be all la 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 sunshine and lollipops. This is going to be magic and easy. But it doesn't have to be super hard either. So that's what I'm here to tell you today. So my first food strategy comes from, I'm a huge food geek, and so one of my foodie heroes is Michael Pollan. And he wrote this big, thick, 400-page book called The Omnivore's Dilemma. And after he wrote that, he decided to distill that down into some food rules. And so he wrote a much skinnier book called Food Rules. And he distilled down everything he'd learned researching that big, giant, thick book into a few rules. And his number one rule for eating healthy was eat food. That sounds kind of stupid, but what he means is eat real food and not what he calls food-like products. So anything that's super processed is what he calls a food-like product, because there's so little real food in it. It's mostly chemicals, it's mostly junk, preservatives, things like that. And we all know this at some part of our brain, but it's a little difficult sometimes to tell what's real food these days and what's food-like products. So he has a couple of strategies that he gives in the book, which I think are really great for knowing whether or not you're eating real food. And one of them is to look at the ingredients. And if there's anything on there you can't pronounce, it's probably not a real food. And if there's anything on there that you can't buy in the grocery store to go home and make that product from scratch, it's probably not a real food. So if you see titanium dioxide and glycophosphate and yellow dye number 5, and you're not finding those on the baking aisle, that's probably not a real food. And the thing about that is that we don't really know nobody studied what those chemicals do to our bodies. And we know that an apple is good for us because we've been eating that apple for millennia, but we don't know what titanium dioxide does because we've only been eating that for maybe 50 years tops. So it's really better to stick closer to things you can actually recognize. Another good way to do this, and this is fun if you have kids because you can do this with them, when you're going through the grocery store, ask yourself, where did this come from or how was it made? And if you can answer it pretty easily, if your toddler can answer it, it's a real food. If you can't answer it, it's probably not a real food. So just for example, where do apples come from? Well, you're sitting with your toddler in the cart. Where do apples come from? Oh, apples grow on trees on a farm. Okay, that's great. Where does applesauce come from? Oh, well, the apples grow on trees on the farm, and then you cook them, and you make applesauce. So those are real foods, because we can very easily say where they came from. So where do green apple flavored chewy fruit snacks come from? Yeah, I don't have a clue where they come. I don't know how you make green apple flavored chewy fruit snacks, so that's really probably not a real food. So this is actually really good to do with your kids because it gets them involved. It gets them thinking about food in that way, like this is real food and this is not real food. And that's a really great way to get them on board. If they're involved with picking out the food and talking about it in the grocery store and things like that, they're going to be more on board with eating it. So even really young kids can do this. So our first strategy towards eating healthier is to eat more real food and less food-like products. And if you can do only one thing that I talk about today, that would be it, because giving up even a few of the processed foods in our lives is going to make you healthier overall in the long term. This is a really easy strategy that you can start with. It's a good place to start. So like I said, one of the reasons is that we don't really know what this processed food does to our health. And the food industry is not out there to help us. Just PS. Kraft and all those big giant, they're not out there to make us healthy. They're out there to sell food. And that's okay. That's what they're there for, but they're not there to make us healthy. So just as an example that I saw recently, Kraft macaroni and cheese in the blue box. Here in the US, they use artificial flavorings and colorings that have been linked in scientific studies to behavior changes and problems and all kinds of endocrine disruptor, like health problems. And in Europe, those ingredients have been banned. So Kraft wanted to continue selling their product in Europe, so they reformulated their blue box mac and cheese for Europe to use natural flavorings. But they haven't done that in the US, and they refuse to because the government isn't making them. And it's cheaper to use the chemicals. So like yellow dye number 5 has been linked to health problems, and they use that in the Kraft mac and cheese. But they've replaced it with turmeric and annatto and natural colorings in Europe because European governments have banned it. So like, they're not looking out for our best interests. Even though they've already got the recipe to make it better, they're not going to sell us that because it's cheaper to sell us the chemicals. So, I mean, that's just one thing to think about. They're not out to make us healthier, they're out to make a profit. Another thing is that same article that I read about the Lunchables, it was talking about how the food industry adds fat and sugar to processed foods because it makes it taste better and it makes us want to buy more. So, just as an example, if you buy a Nabisco cookie at the store, a chocolate chip cookie, it's probably got more fat and more sugar in it than the ones you would make at home. So you're actually better off eating the chocolate chip cookie that you make at home that probably tastes a whole lot better than the one you get from the store, because they add extra stuff to make us buy more. So it's just something to think about. Now, if your family is used to eating a lot of these processed foods like cookies, crackers, chips, fruit snacks, sweetened yogurt, all that kind of stuff, you might be looking at me going, oh my God, that's everything in my cart. I can't possibly do this. So I'm just encouraging you to try to take it one step at a time. Like, identify one food that you could replace with something that's a little closer to a real food. Baby steps. We're not even talking about giving up cookies or giving up chips. Find one that's slightly less processed. Find one that has ingredients that are more familiar to you, that you think, oh, I could actually, like if I had the time, I could actually make these potato chips at home. You know what I'm saying? Because it's only got 4 ingredients. That's the step I'm asking you to take here. And if you want to take it a little further, try swapping out one thing a month. Just make that commitment that you're going to find one thing every month that you can swap out for something that's a little realer. That's going to make a huge, huge difference in your overall health of your family. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that before I keep going?
Maybe this is one
Yeah.
for the ending, but so I've been trying to kind of do these things that you've suggested, but in this kind of a specific question,
No, that's okay.
I can't find, and I don't know how to make crackers.
Yeah.
Like, do you have a recommendation for a healthy cracker?
Yes.
Or a recipe for
Sure.
a cracker?
Crackers are actually super easy to make at home, especially if you have like a food processor or a blender, because it's literally like to make a saltine cracker, flour, salt, a little butter, and water, period. You roll it out real thin. I cut mine with a pizza cutter, and you stick them in the oven for like 15 minutes, done. But if you don't want to make them from scratch, you know, I would just look for ones that you can recognize all the ingredients.
Okay.
Like even I'm going to talk about goldfish crackers later. Even goldfish crackers aren't hugely terrible. You can identify most of the ingredients in those. Like Annie's bunny crackers are even a little bit better. They use more organic ingredients and things like that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, go there first. Look for the organic ones or the ones that you can at least identify most of the ingredients on the list. And then try the making them yourself. You know, see if that works for you. If that doesn't work in your life, you know, it doesn't work in your life. But if it works, that I whipped some up the other day to go with, ran out of saltine crackers. I normally buy them. But we had some soup and we were out and I whipped them up in like 20 minutes. It wasn't a big deal, you know. So if you want to leave me your email address later, I'll send you the recipe.
Cool, thank you.